So here's Flo again on the second debunker, or the second on this series of the Prager University and the Electoral college system. Like last time, due to copyright reasons, no actual footage from the actual video of Prager University will be added. However, a link is put down in the description so that you can view the video, and like last time, the points in the video will be quoted and discussed and debunked. So let us start. It first starts with the very, very funny fact that the video starts with the name or the person, Tara Ross, who is speaking and who is dubbed by Prager University a legal scholar. First of all, what the hell is a legal scholar? Does America have non-legal scholars? I didn't even know that you could have non-legal scholars in the first place. But okay, whatever. Anyway, a legal scholar and author of Enlightened Democracy, which is the utmost funny, coming from a person who blatantly defends autocracy and defends an autocratic system rather than defending democracy and a democratic system. In fact, she kicks democracy with feet and pretty much advocates for something that is known as an autocracy, which is a dictatorial system and a dictatorship. So she then goes to say that the forefathers feared a tyranny of majority so much that they rejected the idea of a direct vote for president, which is a direct quote from the video. Funny. So, okay, you don't want a tyranny by majority and you instead replace it by the tyranny of a few. Yeah, seems legit. Makes a lot of sense. Not law. So she then goes on to say that for 2 centuries, the Electoral College has encouraged coalition building, given a voice to both big and small states, and discouraged voter fraud. We will which is all utter nonsense, but we will address every point one at a time. Starting with point 1, encourage coalition building. This is utter bullcrap. America has no coalitions at all, in fact, whilst real democracies or true democracies, like in Europe, in fact have tons of coalitions. So this is one big fat lie here. Point number 2. The Electoral College gives both big and small states a voice. This is again total, utter nonsense, as all that the candidates need to do, and the vice candidates, is to focus on the main states and maybe also the swing states. The main states simply having the most electoral voters. Since not all states have the same amount of voters, some states have far more voters than others. This gives some states a far bigger voice and far more impact than other states that simply have a smaller amount of voters, which basically makes these smaller states insignificant over the large states which have a much bigger amount of voters. And lastly, point number 3, it discourages voter fraud, which is again a total goddamn bullshit lie. Because in the end, all that candidates need to do is in fact bribe the electorals, which are a small gremium of people, or rather a small gremium of only 538 people. Buying the votes of an entire population, such as in a true democracy, for example, is much harder than simply buying the votes of a small electoral gremium. So if anything, this system encourages vote fraud more than anything. Again, the statement is one big fat lie. Next point. The popular national vote is the state's popular vote automatically, as the state, just like the entire nation, is made up by the people. This is bullshit once again, and again it's cheap lie to try to make people accept an autocracy and accept a dictatorship rather than having a democracy and rather than having actual freedom. Again, democracy comes from the Greek word demos, which mean people and vote, and kratia, meaning power on parliament. Meaning a parliament that holds power based on the vote of the people, and this means exactly by popular vote and nothing else. But as we can see here clearly, America is an autocratic dictatorship rather than a democracy, which it claims to be. And again, the next point is again bullshit and utterly false. Kerry would have kept the votes of California in this example nonetheless. However, nonetheless, he failed to achieve a national popular vote and hence failed to become president. His majority votes he got from California in this example by Prager University are still nonetheless there and still exist. However, he failed to get the national majority and hence failed to become president. Simple as that. So far from all lies stated here, this is the most blatant, most cheap, and most false of all. Having a purely democratic system does not result in you losing any votes in any state. The votes that you have, regardless. In a popular vote, if you have votes, you have them, regardless of anything else. However, just because you have the majority in California, for example, does not make you president automatically. In the electoral college system, however, if you have California and a few other states, you actually become president automatically, even if you totally failed to get votes in other states, which, as discussed earlier, have far lower amounts of electorals. Which is why I said, or why it was stated, that candidates focus on the major states because the major states simply hold a lot of electoral voters and therefore hold a lot of power. Unlike other states who simply do not have that much voters. And now to the next point. No. As stated earlier, the Electoral College actually robs states of their sovereignty. Well, except of course for the biggest states, or rather the states with the most electorals. Law. And no, again, that is bullshit. It actually exactly centralizes, as the elections mostly centralize over states with the most electoral delegates and not vice versa. Hence, you end up with a centralization of voting and political power rather than a decentralization. Because the candidates will focus on the central states which simply have the most electors. And also again, the same goes for democracy. Each state in Germany, for example, has their own set of votes and their own separate processes and cannot and do not interfere with each other either. This is again a bullshit lie. It's a bullshit lie to say that only in the electoral college system you have a system in which each state can have separate processes and that only in the electoral college they do not interfere with each other. The same holds true in a so-called pure democracy or in a true democracy. So this is again one big fat lie. Also, you talk of balance. What balance? Lol. How is there any balance in a system like that that favors certain states over others and blatantly blatantly centralizes the entire voting process? Next point that you stated in the video, Prager University. And that is exactly why you nationalize the voting process in and of itself. Which not only makes voting easier as there is a set rule for all states, but also drastically reduces costs in administration alongside the other pros that were mentioned before. Indeed, why should voters in any state get any pros or cons over others? Indeed, that's a good question, and why should they? But then again, guess what? That is exactly what the Electoral College does, and it promotes exactly that. So this is again a bullshit lie, as mentioned before. Because this happens exactly in case of the Electoral College, and again, not vice versa. In the Electoral College, some voters or some states simply have privileges over others. Seriously, nothing the so-called enlightened Democrats said so far makes any logical sense. And literally anyone with even a shred of knowledge in political science and actual politics can easily debunk this as cheap propaganda and cheap brainwash, which is exactly what this entire video of Prager University is. It is a cheap brainwash to brainwash you into accepting an a totalitarian autocracy and accepting a dictatorship. All I can say to that, to the American people, is do not be brainwashed. Do not accept autocracy. Do not accept a dictatorship. Go for democracy. Fight for your rights. Fight for your freedom. Tackle the system and get your democracy that you all well deserve. If you liked that video, please thumb up, subscribe, and support me. If you have any questions, any additions, anything to say, feel free to comment. And other than that, red salutes, and see you again.